going at 200 miles an hour and everything's under control, you're getting the parts you need, you're servicing your customers in a correct way, everything's fine. But when you're out of control, when you can't get parts and they're beyond your control and you can't influence that, that's when the stress kicks in, because it starts to attack your cash flow. Cash is king in any business.
Welcome to the MTD podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a proud member of the MTD team. I'm really excited to be at Superstar Components today near Lincoln on the hottest day of the year. Today we are investigating a UK entrepreneur manufacturing story, and I'm joined by three very special guests. Firstly, the founder and managing director of Superstar Components, Neil Wilkinson. Welcome to the MTD podcast, and thank you very much for having us at your fantastic facility today. We're going to find out a lot about you during this podcast, but let's introduce our next guest, James Leet, director at Haas UK Automation. Welcome to the podcast
Hi,
again,
Gio.
James.
Thank you. Yep. As you say, very hot day. When you're an athlete trapped in a fat man's body like me, you feel that.
Nice shorts, by the way.
Thank you.
And last but not least, the one and only Lindsay Vickers, presenter at MTDCNC.
I am so hot. I am 8.5 months pregnant and incredibly hot right now.
We've had a brilliant day, eh, Lindsay?
We have, yeah. It's been surrounded by you lot, to be fair. That's what it is. Hey. No, it is. We've had a great day. We've filmed so many videos and it's so interesting and impressive. We're sitting in the boardroom, in fact, at Superstar Components, and the amount of intricate parts sitting in front of us, all different colours, shapes, sizes. It's an impressive place.
Now, Neil, let's start at the very beginning. Tell our listeners about your journey, about how you started this fantastic company. Why bikes?
I was actually a chemist. I'm not an engineer, so I've had to teach myself as I've gone along. So I've probably had a better outlook on engineering than quite a lot of engineers, because I've had to learn everything from scratch. Superstar Components started out as a trading company buying parts from Asia, branding them and selling them direct on the internet. We were one of the first direct sales internet companies. Obviously now everybody's doing it. Internet is awash with eBay sellers, Amazon sellers and so on. But over the years, I got frustrated with Asia, where the majority of parts are manufactured, and decided I can do it better myself, quicker, faster, better. So we bought our first machine, a VF2SS, and it's still running like new, to be honest. And we're still running it every single day, all day long. And it's gone from there.
Right, we're gonna follow this journey through this podcast. Now, let's touch upon the collaboration with Haas UK Automation. Would you say, Neil, before we go on to you, James, have Haas supported you on this journey?
Haas have given me a huge amount of support, both in machines, in advice, in spare parts, in service. Just unlike a lot of companies, you can phone them up and just have a chat, and they're more interested in getting you running again than worrying about sending an engineer out. They'd rather get your machine running in the next 20 minutes. So it's got me to where I am now. We have bought other machines from other brands, but we keep coming back to Haas because they're just good value and they do the job and they keep running a decade on.
Right, let's look at and talk about some of the products from Haas. Now, James, you're renowned for Formula One cars, not bicycles, but your machines now are making bicycle parts. Tell our listeners about the products and solutions that you have offered Superstar Components.
Well, this is a classic story, really, of somebody coming to us, seeing where we're positioned in the market as a good supplier to the subcontract marketplace of fit-for-purpose machines. And when Neil came to us, and we've had this discussion before, he'd not got any experience of CNC machines, buying CNC machines, and we sat down and had a really good discussion. And I remember being involved with that because the sales guy at the time got me involved with the whole process, and just found the right machine that was fit for purpose, not necessarily full of bells and whistles, but we knew Neil had to go fast. We knew he had to be agile. We knew that going forward, he needed to automate things. So a VF2SS standard range product, it just fitted the bill. And then quite quickly, it was evident that we needed just more, bigger, faster, more automated, and the journey's gone from there.
There isn't really a machine in your machine shop that you don't automate. Is that right?
I think there's only one which doesn't have, but I class the 0 point as automation. So in fact, every single one is, because we don't have the human time available to spend days setting a job up. So we need all the machines running all of the time, so we can spend our time programming the next job.
And how long's the company been going?
The machine side has been going for nearly 10, 11 years. Superstar Components itself, 15, 16.
So what's different today than what you were doing back then? How have you really evolved? Like, what's the trade secret?
We've always done something ourselves. I always look at Superstar like the sort of German economy. The German economy is full of family businesses who are in it for the long term, and they do things in-house themselves very competently. A lot of the bike industry is based around venture capital companies who are in it for the quick buck. They throw money at something, they waste hundreds of millions of pounds, but they're the biggest and the best, apparently. I'd rather be small, nimble and profitable and look after my staff.
So what are your ultimate aspirations?
I've got no aspirations to grow to be massive. I quite enjoy doing the things I enjoy. I love programming, I love machining. Usually a machine purchase is driven by me going, that's a shiny, cool piece of kit. I quite want one of them. So I just want to focus on the parts which I'm good at and look after my customers.
So what is the most important part of your business? Is it reducing cost per part?
It's keeping things simple. So it's quick setups, it's being able to cope with variety, volume, making the cost competitive, because we've got to compete with Asia. We don't have a money, no objects, aerospace price point. We are very cutting edge. We're all using the same metal and the same machines, so we can compete if we use our brains.
Now, James, you've visited many companies, the length and breadth of the country. Is this quite a unique story here at Superstar Components?
I think every story is unique. That sounds a bit of a cop-out, but I think by its very nature, I've said before, Britain is a nation of entrepreneurial subcontractors, and by that nature, they have to be reactive to their market, and everybody finds their own solution on the way forward. But what I would say is Superstar have always been very proactive at the way that they've looked at automation, doing things differently, just not going down that traditional, let's knock the cycle time out of this route. Let's find another way of getting our customers serviced with the stock that they need, the right place, right price, right time.
James, can you give an example of those forms of automation? So you've said he's gone for quite a unique area of automation. What has he gone for?
Well, again, what Neil's achieved here is looked at the amount of parts that need to go out of the door by the end of the month, rather than how quickly you can get one part off of a machine. And it's not unique, but it's certainly ingenious, some of the solutions that Neil's come up with, and that's probably down to the fact that Neil had never done this before, so it's a fresh set of eyes, which is really, really good. But for example, rather than get one component off a machine really, really quickly, we saw today there was a VF4SS, which is a reasonable sized VMC, and there was 90 parts being machined at one point in time from 2 sheets of steel, which got the cycle time up to around about 7 hours, something like that, which means that machine can just look after itself for 7 hours while the operator goes and looks after another 2 machines on other longer cycles. So it's not about getting the individual cycle time down, it's about getting the parts per month out the door.
Which is interesting, because at MTD, whenever we're talking about things like this, it's always like, okay, cycle time, but you're actually looking at it in a totally different way.
A lot of the time when I win work, I go to a customer and I say, I won't win the work at 100 parts. What I need to do is understand your business. Everyone has a cash flow problem. It's just universal. So I say to them, if we can make 1,000 over a year, you know you're going to use them. If I can have that volume, I can use a bit of intelligence and a bit of capital to make a more efficient process, be it work holding or invest in new custom tooling. We use a lot of custom ground tooling just to make things efficient. And then if I can cut away at that price and make it efficient, the customer gets what they need. I can then plan my job by taking time over the year. So the machines are always 100%. A good example is this job with 100 parts on a bed for 6-7 hours. We've got to make 3,500 of those. I know the machine's got nothing to do for 3 weeks, so it will be constantly running on that, which will then create capacity further down the line. So although it sounds like 3.5 week block is a lot of work, it's planned in. So it means I have capacity in the future. So I've kept him happy. I've kept future customers happy. And because it's efficient and it runs for, 10 minutes of human time per day for thousands and thousands of parts, the cost can be quite competitive. And also because I can do that, the customer gets a long-term economy of scale price. So they get it very competitive, and the availability. The key thing is that they can turn the volume up or down on what they need. If they suddenly get twice the sales, they can pull twice the components out, because we're not making them in a panic as we need them. Everything's planned ahead, and that's where a lot of my work sits.
You work quite differently to a lot of companies that I've visited personally. You think out the box. Some people are scared of change. To me, it seems that you embrace change. Is this a fair assumption?
Yeah, the world's a fluid place. So I actually find that in recessions, I do very well because I'm a good option. A good example of this is the China shipping situation. In Asia, there's a lot of problems with lead times because suddenly they're really busy. They've lost 3 months of the year, and you can't catch up on 3 months of the year very quickly. So all the factories are full, the lead times have gone through the roof, shipping costs have gone through the roof. So now people are looking for other options, and we're a very valid option, and there aren't many people doing what we do.
I'd like just to explain and describe Neil to the audience. He's quite an entrepreneur. He's sitting here super chilled. He's got his non-alcoholic beer that he orders off Amazon. What was the other thing that you order off Amazon as well? On a monthly
Lots
basis?
of energy drinks.
Lots of energy drinks.
To make me work in the morning.
Exactly. He works till like 11 o'clock at night. And James here has kindly bought us some ice creams today. So we've had a fantastic day, but it has genuinely been so interesting hearing and seeing the fact that you don't think of things in a standard way. You really, really do think out the box. You do. And you see that in your business.
In the background, quite a lot of machines were working. So although I haven't loaded the machine today or really done much, a lot of the machines are still running.
Well, I've got another story for you. We just had to pop out of this podcast, before we started the podcast, to go and find some additional gear for the podcast. And whilst we were down into the manufacturing facility, Neil took it upon himself to go and load a few machines. Well, we got down. You are a workaholic for sure. Now, can we move on to your supply chain? What kind of problems does this cause, especially in this kind of pre-COVID environment that we're all living in?
The world has always been difficult on lead times. The majority of my competitors are box shifters, so they don't manufacture anything, they don't design anything. They just go to a factory who manufactures something like a toaster. They say, stick my logo on it, I want a container of it, which is fine when the world's working fine. But at the moment, the lead times are so bad. We're talking 800 days for Shimano e-bike stuff, for example, is what I've been quoted by my customers. And people can't cope with that. You've got car factories who can't sell cars because they can't get one chip. They haven't got any wheel nuts. It's always been my adage. If you've got a car factory with no wheel nuts, you can't even get the cars off the line. It doesn't matter how many alloy wheels and engines you've got. Miss one part, you're screwed. I've always worked on the fact that I can make pretty much everything. So if there is a panic, we can get something made. One of my biggest issues at the moment is availability of specialist metals. General metals are available, but if you want a particular grade and a particular size with a particular finish, it can be difficult. So I have to think ahead about that. But actually, those materials are a very small part of the total price. So things like bike rims, I buy in bulk and keep in a warehouse, and then I can turn those into a multitude of products. So it's a case of reduce your capital expenditure where you can, and think smarter. But the ultimate flexibility of manufacturing in-house is the holy grail.
I think you've got the luxury of making your own components, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, like James,
just to interject there, Interco Special Steels and Alloys. You need to speak to them because they're our sponsor. Well, so I have to do that's a shameless plug, but come on.
I've bought 17.4pH from them for certain jobs.
Well, there you go, Les. There you go. Now, how different is it for Haas Automation? Getting into the bicycle industry, what's the differences between making bicycle parts and Formula One parts, if any?
No difference really. I mean, let's get it down to basics. The machines will do what you tell them to do. They're capable of doing what is within their capability range. So we know what that range is. We know where we position that range. So it's then a question of working with customers to make sure that they're in control of the process. And picking up on Neil's point and about winning business back from Asia, control, that is the real word. Neil mentioned that, and he's nodding now for the benefit of our wonderful audience that can't see us. Take out, just hang on to that word control at the moment. And then another word that we feel in business is stress. So we're all hot and stressed out today. But that's because...
Not after the ice cream.
Not after the ice cream, of course.
It was delicious.
But let me use an analogy. You talked about Formula One there. So driving a car really, really fast is not stressful. It's actually quite exciting. Losing control of a car at 200 miles an hour, that's stressful. And it's the same with the business. If it's going at 200 miles an hour and everything's under control, you're getting the parts you need, you're servicing your customers in a correct way, everything's fine. But when you're out of control, when you can't get parts and they're beyond your control and you can't influence that, that's when the stress kicks in, because it starts to attack your cash flow. Cash is king in any business. So Neil's picked up on a really, really important point here. He can control his business by manufacturing what he needs to do on his terms. And that's really critical. And at the moment, we're seeing that in the UK. More and more businesses are saying, okay, look, we need to take back control and bring this work back to the UK and start manufacturing things ourselves again. And it's absolutely a core message to manufacturing growth. Post-Brexit, post-COVID, all of these things. But then you look at the other issue, and that's the skills gap. It also talks then to automation. So you can only do that if you can run these machines. And that's where automation helps. Neil's done all of this quite foresighted. 10 years ago he saw this, and now he's 10 years ahead of everybody else.
Well, are we behind? Is that what you're saying? Are we totally...
As a nation, we're not far behind, but we are behind the curve. It's well documented, actually. The UK manufacturing are behind the curve of advanced engineering countries in terms of automation. That's largely down to the fact that we are a nation of subcontractors, so they have to be reactive by their very nature. Sometimes it's about the price point of getting into automation. So if you're a subcontractor, not a manufacturer at the high end, you really have got to watch your pennies of investment. Consciously think about when your next investment is going to be and how much that's going to be and what your return on that investment is going to be and how long you can get it back. Automation can often cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. So the subcontractor goes, I'm doing okay. I won't take that risk. I won't go beyond my control of that. Let's not bother. But what we've been able to do here is actually create some affordable automation in step-by-step points.
Yeah, and on top of that, this is where I want to ask yourself, Neil, a question. You have invested in that high-priced automation.
Yep.
And then you've invested in something not as much as that. So tell us the differences, not branding or anything like that, but tell us the differences and what you see, why, almost, how can I describe, why you choose what you choose to place it where.
It's a classic case of right horse for the right course. And the biggest barrier to entry is cost. If you have to buy if you buy a 100 grand automation system, you won't put it on a 20 grand machine. So that high cost of entry will then mean that you end up with a 200 grand machine. So you've got a 300 grand project, which then is very hard to justify. If you have a 30 grand automation system, I'll have it on every single one. I've been screaming.
Do you get that? Do you get
exactly.
a 30 grand? Or is that,
It's not far off that for this lathe automation system for a gantry. Sure, it's not all the bells and whistles like a top of the range Japanese, but it's not £500,000 machine. Yeah. I've got completely different expectations. Actually, it's blown my expectations out the water. I bought my first automation, a multi-pallet, 32 pallet, 5-axis CNC machine. It was a hell of a lot of money. You've got to have a lot of work and you've got to charge a lot to pay for it. It's a beast. It's a great machine. The robot cell we use for making one part, again, big investment. It was getting on for 200 grand for a 4th axis with a robot cell. Very hard entry. It was perfect for the job, really efficient, but it's very hard entry to the market. I've been saying for years, probably saying to James far too many times, saying, if you can do a 5-axis milling machine with a robot loader, which can do 100 parts for 100 grand, I'll just line them up like forever. But it's the consumer model. PCs cost a fortune originally, but if you make more, they get cheaper. But my issue with automation is they don't keep it stupid. They don't keep it simple. Stupid. Let's put a vision system on. Let's put conveyors on. Let's put massive light guards. Let's make it really complicated. That makes it really expensive, which is fine for certain things. If you're a die casting maker, that's perfect. High volume of different things. That's what you need. I'm getting square billets, and I want to just chuck them in the machine. It's a square billet to the centre of a centric pneumatic vise, and machine it. Doesn't need to be any more complicated. So if you can get the cost down, you can buy more machines, make more parts, be more cost effective, compete with Asia.
For me, the thing that stands out the most for me personally visiting your facility today is not the machine tools, not the automation, but the work holding.
Yep.
And how you've fully utilised the machining envelope, completely fully utilised it to suit your applications. And it's like the machine tool is like the blank canvas, if you like.
Correct.
And everything that you've done around it is completely bespoke to suit what you're making. And everything is perfect for application. When you look at automation, especially in the UK, you mentioned kind of barriers to entry. I think a lot of the barriers to entry is fear because they've never used it before. You've not got no fear. There's no fear in anything that you do here. And you are going into new levels of you're breaking barriers. You're breaking barriers because you're going into things that maybe other people don't do, and in the way you do things are very unique and very innovative, to say the least. Very innovative.
James, can I? Oh, will you?
No,
James. So, let's go to Haas now. What Neil just said about this is an ideal form of automation. Have you taken on board that? Is that an option? When you're talking about 5-axis and that, what is the next step? What is the future for the automation with Haas?
Absolutely, we've taken that on board, but we've taken that on board from our own manufacturing process as well. So one of the machines we've been talking about here, and Neil just alluded to, is the latest acquisition from Superstar, which is a Y-axis 6-inch chuck-in lathe with an auto parts loader. And that's beautifully simplistic, very, very competitively priced, but it's something that the factory at Haas have been using for years to make their spindles. Then been able to do is to evolve and develop that process to make it a commercially viable product. And we talked about economy of scale manufacturing. Of course, that's exactly what Haas do. So for many years, we've been able to offer a robot interface, automation interface, and we continue to do so. But we're also typically Haas making more and more of our own products so that it's fully integrated through the control. And of course, it's a one-stop shop if you need help, support, maintenance.
Have you got any exciting, different exciting projects like breaking news or anything that maybe people don't know about, or should I not even be asking this?
Well, like the comment about the fact that I've got shorts on, I haven't, by the way.
You'd love to have some shorts on.
I'd love to have some shorts on, but these things get out and then they don't actually come out to be true, do they? So, no, I mean, the factory are always evolving, even their current products. The VF1 has evolved for the last 30 odd years, but essentially a VF from Haas is still a VF, but enhancements happen in the software, the mechanics and everything else. It's a constant process. It'd be crazy not to be. It's the same with automation. The difficulty with automation previously has always been the interface, and will continue to be so, because if we install a third party's automation equipment, we have to talk about who is running this, who's the master, who's the slave.
To blame as well if something goes wrong.
Well, and also then there's health and safety, there's what system is driving which system. It becomes complicated, and suddenly you can throw 50 grand at just making the two things talk to each other. The ability to make things simple, keep things simple, this is where Haas come to the party and don't claim to be all things to all men. As usual, we just do a fit for purpose thing that will do, to an extent, what we need to do. If you want it to do something else, then we've got another solution, but we need to look outside the box.
How important is it to your business and that this solution is fully integrated with the automation?
Strange to say that. The reason on the lathe why we went with this one was because we could have got a robot cell from anybody. Problem, as James said, is as soon as you involve an integrator, it's 50 grand on top for paperwork. And it does feel like that from a buyer's point of view. I'm sure there's a huge amount of work that goes in it. I want to buy a domestic appliance effectively. It's not to downplay the quality of the machines. You expect your washing machine to last forever and just keep working and be simple and be cheap. So it's not cheap as in poor quality, it's mass produced and it's engineered to be very good value, and that's what Superstar is. We're not cheap, we're good value. So I love the ST10 because there's videos online showing you how simple it is to use. I have a certain robot manufacturer's robot. It is in a language is like speaking a different language. It's incredibly flexible to do anything you want, but I need to again keep it simple. Stupid. The Haas control, you just go onto it, it just runs you through a load of questions. What's the size, what's the spacing, what's the height? You drive it in, you pick it up, you put it in the chuck. That's everything it needs to know.
So it's not over-engineered. It does what it says on the tin. It's not over-engineered.
Exactly, literally exactly what it is on the tin. It's simple to use. It's all through the control.
Fit for purpose.
Exactly. Literally, you can just get on it. Anybody can get on it, and within 20 minutes, you're running it. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be a exercise of a Mensa test to be able to get this blooming thing to work. And this is why I'm twisting James' arm about 5-axis with a robot, because I can go and buy a robot cell for a Haas machine, but it's a pain in the arse compared to just using their robot cell. Their robot cell isn't quite big enough for my liking, so I want a longer robot. A few little tweaks.
We're working on it.
It's working on it.
This is what I was trying to get out of you earlier, guys.
But this is why the beauty is it's simple. It just works, and this is why you go for the big integrated 5-axis machine pallet loaded things, because they just work. And at this end of the market, for a more consumer level machine, just a 3-axis milling machine or a normal, they're capable of making anything. Again, I don't want to spend 150 grand on a robot cell. I want to spend 50 grand on it so they can buy another 3 5-axis machines.
So effectively, it's return of investment.
Exactly.
What you're saying is return of investment, basically.
It's more the ease of spending the money. To spend 350 grand on a machine is quite a tall order. If somebody said, 5-axis machine with a robot load, which will run 24 hours a day, and it's 150 grand, whatever, I'll order it today. Go on, here's my credit card, just do it. That's the key to it. And that's how easy it is to do, because you can see the return on investment in weeks, not months.
And we're coming to the end of this podcast now, just to round up and summarise. Without automation, could you have been as successful as you've been to date so far?
No, absolutely not. The beautiful sound of coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning and hearing machines still running, and they've been running all night while you're in bed, that is the most beautiful sound.
My final question to you is, for end users out there that are maybe doing low volume work, high mix, what advice would you give to them in regards to automation? Keep
it simple. If it's a square block, you can make lots of different things out of a square block, and it's really easy to load a square block. So don't think about making the complete product. Get 90% of the work automated. So I've got most of my machines doing Op1, 95% of the work. Use nice 5-axis vice where you can reach under and get more than your 5 sides. You get 5.5 sides. And then you've got a quick 2-minute second op to finish the part. And then all the work's been done by the machine. And it's very easy to automate a rectangular block load than a complex shape.
I really like the point that you made earlier on in this podcast, that palletization is automation in itself. That is, some people don't look at palletization as automation or 0 point as automation.
Change vices.
It is absolutely key. James, we're running out of time, but any last thoughts?
No, we're running out of time.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Lindsay?
Great day. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Here at Superstar. We've done a nice tour, and we've created a salt and chip show here as well. So if you want to see into Superstar Components machine shop, look out for that show, because we do a bit of a tour. You meet Neil. We talked to James about these machines, so you've got a visual representation. You can really get into the mind of Neil and the team here by watching that show. That's not just a shameless plug. I think sometimes it's great to listen to it all, but to see it all in action, I think it's really important. So really appreciate you having us.
It's been a pleasure, and you can go onto the website and look at the components that Superstar Component make, and you can also go onto the Haas website and check out some of their machine tools and automation solutions. We really hope that you've enjoyed the latest MTDCNC podcast. Until next week, MTD Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on mtdcnc.com.